No. All right, so let's do this. Basically your sheets say, just to keep, so that your active listeners listen to kind of what that controversy is and be able to write that down. If you're not able to identify it, then you can even write it down in the question section. But those three elements that I asked, so the controversy, and then the various perspectives and the mediation points, you want to try to write those down as you listen to the presenter. And then make sure to jot down at least one or two questions that you have, whether it's for clarification on something that the presenter said or just anything you would want to ask that person based on what they've said. So, sound good? All right, we're ready.
I'm Will Scott. My presentation is Rethinking Biofuels, the Reality of Fossil Fuel Replacements. So, everyone knows about global warming and what a big problem that's becoming, and also that a lot of the energy we use today comes from non-renewable sources, fossil fuels. One of the really promising replacements for fossil fuels in the past years has been biofuels. They're a lot more clean burning than fossil fuels, and they're also renewable, so we can use them for an indefinite amount of time. So a little background on two of the big biofuels that are being used right now. Ethanol, which is one, at least in the U.S., the most widely used. It is an alcohol. It's produced from the fermentation of carbohydrates from corn, sugarcane, a lot of other crops. Generally, right now, it's produced from parts of the food that we would normally otherwise eat. But there is some emerging technologies that would let us produce it from cellulose, which would be like grass and corn stalks and trees, and just parts of the plants that are otherwise waste. And biodiesel, that's not quite, at least in the U.S., isn't as widely used, but it's a monoalkyl ester, and it's made from animal fats and vegetable oils. So both of these can be used alone, power cars and stuff, but generally right now they don't have a high enough energy density, so they get mixed. And also ethanol is really corrosive, so they'll get mixed in with normal fossil fuels. So ethanol will go in with gasoline or biodiesel will be mixed in with normal diesel. So here's a energy density comparison, or an energy density chart that has a lot of the different fuels. So over here, you can see diesel. An energy density, basically what that means is how much energy is contained in a certain weight of a fuel. So diesel's over here with the highest energy density, and biodiesel is actually really close to the energy density of normal diesel. Then right here, there's gasoline, but ethanol is way down here, so it's kind of a ways from actually matching up with what it's trying to replace. So the government really wants to find a new source of renewable energy, obviously, and they've been giving a lot of help trying to get biofuels off the ground. So currently, they've mandated that the Congress has mandated that biofuel use must reach 36 billion gallons annually by 2022. And they also have a lot of subsidies, such as a 45-cent per gallon tax credit for blenders. A blender is a company that mixes biofuels with fossil fuels to then be sold to the public. And so far, between 2005 and 2009, 17 billion has been spent by the government on biofuels and their production. And at the current rate, that's going to be at 53 billion by 2015. And one big problem that people are having with biofuels is that with the current production techniques, it's usually produced from the part of the crop that would otherwise be food. So obviously it has an effect on food supplies. So food prices globally are at an all-time high right now. And between just October and January, there was a 15% raise in these prices. And we don't really notice these prices globally, but globally it does have a big impact. That raise from October to January sent 44 million people in low-income countries into poverty. So that's what we're doing with the food supply is something we really need to be conscious of what effects it has locally and globally too. So you might say, let's just grow a lot more of these crops and we can make them viable. produce or to replace fossil fuels. Sorry, but one problem is when you convert land to grow more crops, you actually release a lot of carbon in the air, and that's one of the big things that biofuels are trying to avoid, is releasing carbon in the air from burning fossil fuels. So, one study found that converting peatlands in Indonesia for palm oil would take 423 years to lay out the carbon debt. Basically, what that's saying is just converting the land to make these crops would release as much carbon as 423 years of savings for burning for biofuels. And another study found that similar conversions for corn, soybeans, palm oil, and sugarcane release between 17 and 420 times the annual carbon savings from burning biofuels. So converting a lot more land, just grow more crops and make more biofuels sounds nice, but in reality it actually makes environmental problems a lot worse sometimes. In conclusion, technology has not advanced enough to the point where we can really be replacing fossil fuels with biofuels. We need to find ways to produce biofuels, with lower emissions and negligible ramifications on food supply, such as using cellulose if that technology really works out. So I suggest that we stop funding and the U.S. government stops funding and encouraging the production of biofuels, and rather puts their money into research and production technologies for biofuels, so that one day biofuels will be realistic and effective replacement for fossil fuels.
Yeah, so now, I mean, if you want to ask questions, we'll open the floor up for that according to your presentation.
I guess I was under the assumption that they stopped doing the subsidies like a year back. Are they still doing it for like the producers and stuff, or did they just stop the subsidies like the biofuel plants?
I think really recently they did just stop doing it. So I think that was a good idea.
What about the amount of food that just like goes towards like feeding animals and stuff? 'Cause I know a good portion of the crops that we grow, especially in this country, goes towards feeding animals.
Well, that all kind of goes into all the different places that the food supply goes to. So if you only have a certain amount of food, or a set food supply, and that's just going to feeding people or feeding animals or to biofuels. That's your question. Is that it?